Okay, we're ready to go, everyone. Welcome. Good evening. Welcome to the Rules Committee meeting of Monday, April 2nd, 2012. It is 10 after 6, and we have a quorum. Thanks. First, we're going to call for citizen comment. There are two people who are signed in. First is Jeff Smith, and then Tom McAuliffe.
Thank you, committee members. I have a comment on two items on the agenda. The first is on item 6, public comment on non-agenda items. And you'll forgive me, I hope, if citizen comment on citizen comment has an Escher-like quality to it. But I've been coming to these meetings on and off for maybe 20 years, and in the main, my observation is that citizen comment is not abused by citizens. There's 75,000 people in Evanston, roughly two-thirds or more of those are adults, and it seems to me that the changes being contemplated are largely in response to the actions of a relative handful of people. And my purpose here is not to opine on the merits of any particular citizen's comments, nor on your reactions, but overall, taken in the context of everything that this city does, a freewheeling exchange, I think, is beneficial to discourse, or at least has to be tolerated in the name of the First Amendment. And I think it would be a mistake to change rules because of circumstances that may not persist in the future. One of the things I learned in law school is that bad facts make bad law. The second item is with regard to the presentation by the Plan Commission on the Comprehensive General Plan. Goal 5, amending the Comprehensive Plan to provide for transit-oriented development, says that the idea hasn't been implemented through any change in applicable zoning or other land use ordinance. I disagree with that because the idea of transit-oriented development was discussed extensively in the development of the Central Street Master Plan and the zoning changes to implement that master plan and the overlay districts that were then passed as part of the implementation of that general plan. Central Street has been transit-oriented since its inception, practically, and that's documented through pictures. And we and the Plan Commission and the Council of that time took it into consideration. And I would suggest to whoever wrote this that perhaps a little retrospective into the recent history of our zoning might prove beneficial in seeing how transit-oriented development can be successfully implemented with the support of citizenry in other areas of the city. Thank you much.
Tom McAuliffe.
Good evening. Alderman Tenneman and I have been speaking for a couple of weeks about a subject that he's referred to the Rules Committee, and he asked or suggested that I speak briefly about it to give you a little bit of background. The topic is a proposal that the City Council pass a resolution supporting a constitutional amendment enabling Congress to effectively regulate campaign spending. Because that affects everybody in a larger and larger way with every passing year. The issue was brought to a head by the Supreme Court ruling in the Citizens United case 2 years ago that allowed unlimited spending by corporations on political campaigns. And we're going to see the full effect of that in the fall general election, but we've already seen it over the past few months, how much the spending has gone up. Just a few brief facts. In 2012, the spending on political campaigns is projected to be $10 billion, up from $7 billion in 2008. And most of that money comes from wealthy individuals and corporations. Less than 1% of the population contributes more than $200 in a given campaign cycle. So most of it comes from a relatively small number of influential corporations and individuals. Lobbying expenditures over the past 12 years, $20 billion has been spent on lobbying. $4.4 billion by the finance, insurance, and real estate industries, $4.4 billion by the healthcare industry. And there are numerous studies that show that the return on investment that companies get for that is very high, which means the influence that they get for bending regulations and laws their way is effective. All of that has a number of effects. One of them is to distort congressional priorities and get the focus where if the general public were setting the priorities, it would be very different. 30 to 70% of congresspersons' time is spent raising money instead of addressing issues they should be focused on. And it's often viewed, that position is viewed as a track for many people to becoming a lobbyist. And from 1998 to 2004, half of our senators, almost half of our representatives became lobbyists when they retired. In 2010, 172 former members of Congress were lobbyists. So, and this is not a partisan issue. The corrupting effect of all this money affects all of us and limits the effectiveness of our government. That the Citizens United ruling is based on two principles: that corporations are considered persons under the Constitution with respect to protection of speech, and that money spent in the political arena is considered a form of speech. So a constitutional amendment needs to establish that corporations don't have rights under the Constitution, and that money is a form of property, and Congress can regulate the expenditure of money in the political arena. Once those principles are established, then Congress can pass effective legislation to regulate spending. So why an Evanston resolution? It takes 2/3 majority in both houses of Congress to pass an amendment bill, and then it has to be ratified by three-fourths of the states. A number of bills have already been introduced in both houses, but getting them passed is going to require a massive level of support and education throughout the country. A number of organizations have been working with states and cities and towns across the country, and more than 60 other cities and a couple of states have passed resolutions supporting such an amendment. The issue has such a large impact on every Evanston citizen and every citizen in this country that I hope we can pass a resolution and let our representatives, first of all, know how strongly we feel about it, but also it'll help to raise awareness nationally through multiple organizations, websites, social networking sites that have developed focusing specifically on this topic. There are now tens of thousands of people that are working on this across the country. It's a multi-year effort, but we have to start somewhere. There are efforts underway in Chicago and other cities in Illinois, but no one has yet passed a resolution. So Evanston has the opportunity to take the lead again on an issue of national significance. So I hope you'll give it consideration. And my thanks to Alderman Tendam and to Mayor Tisdall for their support.
Thank you very much. Because of the length of the agenda for tonight's meeting, this wasn't on as an agenda item. And I talked to Alderman Tendam about that, and that we made the decision to invite Mr. McAuliffe to come and comment on. I thank you very much for your comments. It is very important. But it will be on the next agenda of the next Rules Committee. The next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 5th, 2012.
Move approval. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and now we're going to have a presentation by the Plan Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. Mr. Galloway and Mr. Peters, are you presenters tonight? Mr. Peters is going to present.
The Plan Commission was asked to devise a work plan and communicate it to you. And Attached to the memo as an appendix are the statutory and ordinance duties of the Plan Commission, which is to conduct hearings and make recommendations for plan unit developments, changes to the ordinance, and also the comprehensive plan. And those duties are our first goal, the highest priority. We have just finished codifying rules with the hope that our hearings will take less time, so that the process of gaining approval for development in Evanston is faster. And we will be testing them and implementing them in the next few months. The second objective is to review the neighborhood plans and incorporate them into the comprehensive plan, looking for inconsistencies. That will clarify the legal status of the neighborhood plans and be quite helpful to the city in the event of litigation. It will also, if we find incompatible sections, provide a way to resolve those ambiguities. The third goal is consistent with the priorities adopted by the Council, and the top priority being economic development. Evanston is a community that's very mature, largely developed, most of the land's occupied, and so if economic development is to happen, we need to identify places where it can happen and to make it a priority in the comprehensive plan. At present, it's not a priority, and so we need to address that issue. The time frame shown on the handout in the packet you have is July 2012, but probably it'll take more time than that, depending on how many hearings we have to conduct for plan unit developments. My guess would be fall. The fourth goal is to provide for transit-oriented development. I am the writer that said we haven't done that here in Evanston, but of course we have transit stations, and the age of this community predates the dominance of the automobile, and so we have transit-oriented development already, but we haven't done serious planning around that issue. I said in my memo that Central Street transit-oriented development has already been examined and is part of the Central Street plan, but for the other areas near train stations and CTA stations, there hasn't been a specific examination of how transit-oriented development might be enhanced. And I believe those areas, and the Plan Commission believes those areas, are one of the places where economic development can occur. Transit-oriented development is mixed use. Mixed use is known and common in Evanston, and mixed use planning and mixed use development provides additional places where we can have economic development in combination with quality residential and development. So that's pretty much a description of what we're going to do if we get time between the hearings and what our subcommittees will do, looking at those issues in the order of priority that I suggested. I'm happy to answer questions.
No questions? Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Peters. Summers.
Good evening. My name is Lori Summers. I'm the current chair of the zoning board. I have been a member of the zoning board for about almost 6 years now. Currently, our board is a full board, which is great, and we do have adequate membership that represents both the legal and design communities, as well as multiple other disciplines that helps us be effective across the board in hearing the cases that we hear. Recently, in September of 2011, we have completed a re-review of our rules and made amendments as necessary, particularly relating to the way we record hearings, et cetera, and making sure that all of that has been updated. Beyond that, you'll see in your packet the outline of the goals of the zoning board. The goals for the zoning board are quite narrow and defined, as are the standards that we're required to review all of our cases at our meetings at. So quite simply, we hear major and minor variances that are brought forward from the zoning ordinance, oftentimes by everyday citizens within the city. And generally, we are the determining body on those cases. We also hear appeals of the zoning administrator. Generally, those relate to citizens questioning minor variations that have been heard by the zoning administrator, or occasionally items that have been deemed to be compliant. And finally, we make recommendations to the City Council itself. Those are on special uses, off-street parking, and on rare occasion on items relating to building height over 50 feet. However, those, generally speaking, end up getting compiled with a lot of other things and brought to the Plan Commission. One thing on that last item in terms of recommendations that I would just mention, because I know that many of you were on other boards or not with the council several years ago when we changed the rules for the zoning board in terms of how we make recommendations to the city council. The rules for the zoning board state that we take a vote and the recommendation goes to the city council as is. However, that vote stands that night. So even if we don't have 4 votes in either direction, which would normally be required when we're determining, that's not the case when we're recommending. So if there's just 3 votes, 3 is the majority, then that's how it gets carried over to the city council. And that's in an effort to keep with the timeliness of things that are carrying forward. I would note, however, that does require a little bit further insight into the discussion that zoning might have had, because a 3-0 vote doesn't necessarily mean, even if it was a recommendation to deny, it doesn't necessarily mean that the zoning board would want to necessarily recommend to deny. Often it relies on technicalities where we might have asked the applicant to provide additional information to City Council, but the strict technicalities that we review with our standards require us to vote as we do. So I would just remind you that those are how the rules are set up, and certainly ask that you pay close attention to discussion information when we are a recommending body. And I think that's all I had for now, if there's any questions.
Okay, Alderman Grover.
Well, thank you, Ms. Summers, and thank you, Mr. Peters. Because I know that both our zoning board and the Plan Commission have a great deal of good local expertise, a lot of talent on those 2 boards, that Mr. Meehan and I exchanged messages today about collecting the bios of the board members of both our zoning board and the Plan Commission so that we can appreciate the expertise that they bring to their deliberations and get a better idea of who these Evanston residents are who are volunteering, sharing their time and expertise with us on these issues. So looking forward to that.
And Ms. Summers is the representative from ZBA to Economic Development.
Yes.
And Mr. Freeman is the Plan Commission rep to Economic Development. So we benefit from your knowledge.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is a discussion of celebrating Evanston's 150th birthday in 2013. I'll ask the city manager to tell us about this.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good evening. You have before you a staff report which summarizes the work that's been going on by the independent Evanston 150 Steering Committee, which was formed a little while ago, I guess about a year ago now, and which is working on a process which I think most of you are familiar with, identifying 10 big ideas, and that process is continuing. Steve Griffin, our Community and Economic Development Director, is the city's representative on the steering committee, and the memorandum and attachments talk about where that process is. The issue really before you tonight is sort of a second issue dealing with the celebration, and that is that the celebration is the recognition of the incorporation of the city government of Evanston, and we as a city government have not discussed what would be an appropriate way for the city government to be more involved in this recognition of 150 years since the city's incorporation in 1863. There's now a subgroup of the Evanston 150 group that is meeting to look at the more recognition celebration side of things. Kate Todd from my office is the city's representative on that group, and there have been a couple of meetings held, and that group continues to look for ideas from a more celebratory standpoint. But we wanted to take some time this evening to get your feedback. On the second page of the memorandum, there are some ideas that we've come up with internally, which we'd appreciate some feedback on. One deals with the logo itself. Would it be appropriate to have the city place the logo in various locations around the city? We've talked about either using that logo as an entrance sign, perhaps focus on the large pillars that exist at some entrance points, which predate me, but I think you know what they look like. We also have photos for if you need a recollection, where it simply says Evanston established 1863. Might it make sense to do something with those? It seems that some of them have lights that no longer work. Perhaps it might make sense to landscape those, have the lights fixed and whatnot. Also have thought about using the logo for flags at city facilities, the logo on the vehicles. From a celebration perspective, Mayor Tisdale and I have had sort of a running conversation about these issues over the last several months, and we've kind of focused on the 4th of July. Would it make sense for the city next year to have a greater involvement in the 4th of July parade, either by a float or participating financially in that parade? There are other events that the celebration committee of the Evanston 150 committee are looking at. We could perhaps be helpful there. Then there are the more municipal things. So might it make sense? I know in some communities they have reenactments of the first city council meeting, and we could look to minutes that exist and have a reenactment. So I think there were 74 aldermen at the time in 1863, so we could get 74 interested residents to participate as the Evanston City Council at that time. We could also perhaps hold an event recognizing all the living former mayors and aldermen, a lunch, a dinner, something like that for recollection. So, and there's a wide variety of things. I think it would be appropriate for the city to, whatever is decided, to perhaps get a head start with this. In many communities, the celebration is more of an 18-month celebration than a 12-month celebration, so it might be appropriate if we are going to make any signage changes, things like that, to try to have those ready to go this summer so that we can have a full 18 months. But again, the council has not discussed these issues, and I thought it was a good opportunity this evening to raise them with you. So whatever comments, feedback you have will be most welcome.
Okay. Mayor Tisdale.
Thank you, Alderman Fisk. When we were doing the video, when we won the national award from the U.S. Mayor's Conference, and they sent a professional video team to Evanston, trying to find the most welcoming entrance to the city was extremely difficult. We have welcome to Evanston, and then don't use cell phones, no truck route, all this list of things you can't do. So when you said here, enhancing existing entrance monuments, enhancing the welcome to Evanston signs, and maybe putting the you can't this and you can't that signs a little further away from the border would be a good thing.
Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bob Quitz and Mayor Tisdale, for helping us start thinking about planning a party. Grand Rapids, Michigan and Traverse City, Michigan have both done these great videos called lip dubs. They involve the entire community in putting together kind of doing a lip sync to one great tune, and it takes place and involves lots of people. I think Grand Rapids, unfortunately, cost about $40,000 for them to produce it, but they're hilarious, and it allows you to showcase parts of that community that are either amusing or historical, but also to highlight the people of the community. And perhaps a corporate sponsor could help us with that. We've got a lot of videographers in Evanston. But I encourage you to see if you can pull up from the internet the lip dub from Traverse City or Grand Rapids, because they're really very funny.
Alderman Tindem?
Thank you. I believe one of the biggest bangs for the buck, I suppose, would be putting with our branding of our regular automobiles, trucks, fleet, doing some sort of attachment to that makes the 150 logo work synonymously with that for the 18-month, whatever period it is. I think it's probably the most far-reaching in terms of getting our message out there. It goes to all corners of the city, and it would be consistent, and we could even take off from there and do other T-shirts, other things that would be of a similar fashion. But I think one of the most effective uses of what money we might use, it would be branding the 150 along with our city logo.
Alderman Rainey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Number 2, the group is considering holding 1 to 5 special citywide events. I would really appreciate it if Bike the Ridge was included in that list of events. It is a citywide event. People from all over the city and outside of the city participate in it. And, not everybody can do a triathlon, but everybody can do Bike the Ridge. Even people in wheelchairs, people who are elderly, everybody can do Bike the Ridge. So I encourage it to be considered if they do that.
Okay, anybody else?
One other thing. I'm not so sure that everybody in our community understands the 150 logo, and I don't know that it translates like some of us think it translates. So I would really give a lot of thought to considering how to fix that.
Well, I love this idea. I love the idea of a party, sandcastles on the beach, anything that energizes the community, ice cream socials. One of the images that is a really iconic image of Evanston is that picture in 1876 of the celebration in Fountain Square when the fountain was dedicated originally. And what's cool in there is that it looks like everybody in the community is right there around the fountain with their horses and wagons and kids, and everybody's there. And I'd like to do something that has some value, some historical value like that, so that people can, so that we can bring people together. And I think these suggestions are all very good for bringing folks together. And I think it's a good idea to have them all around the community. Bike the Ridge is a great idea, something in Northwest Evanston, the parade on Central Street, building sandcastles, something, the gathering in downtown Evanston, whether it's an ice cream social or what, and anywhere else in Evanston is just, I think we need to reach out into the larger community. But I think this is a great idea, to start planning for this, and I'm really excited about it. So I'm not so excited about building a float, unless some of you been there, done that in high school and college, and not sure I want to do that again. But maybe we can all march together in the 4th of July parade. I don't know. The mayor can lead us. The mayor can decide. But thank you, City Manager, for your suggestions. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful set of ideas. And thank you, Kate, for your work on the committee. Okay, that brings us to a discussion on public comment for non-agenda items at the end of City Council meetings.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, in order to better address public comments made on non-agenda items, staff is recommending amendments in addition to Section 6 of the City Council's rules dealing with citizen participation. In the staff report we've prepared, we have some proposed changes to Section 6. Basically, what those changes are proposed to do is to separate out public comment into 2 times during the course of a meeting, to have the public comment at the beginning of the meeting for agenda items only, and that the procedure process would remain the same. It's also proposing a new, what would be a new Section 6.6 of the council rules, which reads as follows. The council, as part of the agenda, shall, at the time of each regular meeting, invite the public to provide comments on non-agenda items during a citizen forum for which council has allocated up to 15 minutes. During this portion of the meeting, each speaker addresses the council once on any issue of concern or interest. Council has the opportunity to provide follow-up comments, feedback, or discussion during the course of the citizen forum. Interested persons shall sign their name and address on a designated citizen participation sheet prior to the beginning of the meeting. A speaker may address the council for no more than 3 minutes. I think that this is a positive for a couple different reasons. One, I think that it allows the council to more quickly get to the business at hand. I know that there have been frustrations expressed over time for issues that bring lots of folks out, that the ability to get their comments on the record and get to the item is very important. Secondly, I think when issues are brought up that are not on the agenda and are issues of a larger scope, there's been a frustration by the council that under your rules you're not able to respond or interact or engage in a conversation. And in looking at what other communities do, this idea of a citizen forum really opens that door so that residents come to the council with an issue that deserves to be discussed and fleshed out. The council, under these proposed rules, would have an opportunity to engage the member of the public who's come before you, ask questions, have discussion amongst you, and then decide, proper future steps, either to refer to committee or something else. Right now, I think that when issues come before the council on non-agenda items and there's an interest for engagement or an interest in some sort of dialogue, the council is hindered by its rules, which clearly state there shall be no discussion. The city manager is allowed to make clarifying comments, and that's really about it. So I think that this change would allow the council to have a more full dialogue and to ask questions of individuals who from time to time bring all sorts of interesting, intriguing thoughts and ideas to the council, but right now really can't be followed up on that point. So again, the changes are fairly straightforward, and I think that certainly merit your consideration.
Mayor Tisdall.
What this does is it increases public comments by 15 minutes. So rather than in any way, I don't like to disagree with Mr. Smith now that he's left, but it does not limit freedom of speech in any way. It increases it.
Yes, Alderman Grover.
I guess my questions are for the citizens who address us during citizen comment. It feels sometimes as if they have trouble getting our undivided attention at the beginning of the meeting, and I worry that they won't have our undivided attention if the citizen forum happens in the last 15 minutes of a meeting, which often is very late at night. And so that's one of my concerns is just will they get the due attention to their comments if they're at the end of the meeting. My other concern is how this exchange would play out and how the 15 minutes, which is, I suppose, limited just for the individual citizens to comment, whether that includes time for an exchange and feedback or comments or discussion. And could then this citizen forum time be actually quite lengthy if it includes discussion and feedback and exchange with the residents who are speaking and addressing us?
Alderman Grover, members of the committee, certainly all valid points. And I think really the question for the council is how best to embrace this. I think in some communities, they view the work of the council not just in one meeting, but it's sort of a monthly cycle. And I think in some communities where they will have a committee of the whole or a meeting that has less business, they will use this as a tool on that meeting. Now, for the way the Evanston City Council is currently working, that third Monday of each month is designated for presentations and items for consideration by the full council. I mean, another alternative could be that the non-agenda discussions happen only once a month. I think we would want to make sure that the law department is comfortable with current Illinois law as far as public comment is concerned. But I think it's a matter of is the system working as we currently have it, and is there opportunities to improve it?
It does raise that question for me, is whether we could tell residents who have non-agenda issues to discuss, non-agenda, that they could speak once a month at one meeting.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Manager Bob Quitz, Grant for our Corporation Counsel. I think that would merit some further research that would drill down on that particular point. However, Alderman Grover, council meetings are governmental processes with a governmental purpose. The case law is ironclad, clear, no doubt about it. Federal, state cases over the last 30 to 40 years have established that. So really what it boils down to is, I think, generating the expectation interest on both sides of the dais, and then clearly enunciating, if you want to limit it to that particular meeting, as long as it's enunciated and it's correctly, fairly applied to all speakers, then it passes all constitutional muster, it passes all case law muster.
There being a difference between free speech expressed in the public square and free speech expressed in the civic center before the meeting of the public body.
There's a case that directly addresses that point head on, and I'm paraphrasing only slightly, and it says that very strict First Amendment protections are not going to be imported lock, stock, and barrel into a council meeting where it's a governmental process with a governmental purpose. The people's business has to be done. So that's where you get reasonable time, place, manner restrictions that come into focus.
Alderman Holmes.
I understand moving the non-agenda items to the end of the meeting. I'm just not real comfortable with the forum. I think that we should encourage everyone to come to a committee meeting where they can discuss whatever items. And non-agenda items are items, because we'd have a much longer time to have that kind of dialogue back and forth between the officials and the citizens. I just don't see 15 minutes doing that, and I'm not real comfortable with the citizens forum. I'm fine with the change of the comments being at the end, but not with the citizens forum. I think that's better to have that at our committee meetings.
Alderman Rainey.
Well, I've never felt that because a person is an elected official or a public servant, that entitles the community to abuse and disrespect and slander them. However, that does happen, and I've come to accept that some people think that if you're elected to some office, you can be humiliated publicly. So that's okay. However, I don't like being abused, slandered, insulted, or humiliated before a council meeting or after a council meeting. So I'm not supporting this. The most insulting, slanderous comments are made by me, made at me, take 6 minutes at every single council meeting, and I can put up with it. I have developed a very deep regard for my office and a very thick skin, and so I think because there are a couple of people who are, embarrassing themselves and embarrassing us at every single meeting, I think it is wrong to make law because of a couple of people. And for that reason, I agree with Jeff Smith, and I was interested in hearing his comments because I pretty much feel the same way as he does. I think the mayor has an obligation. We have a rule that the Rules Committee created years ago, and that is that the business of the city council must start 45 minutes after the commencement of citizen comment. And so we need to make sure that our mayor is strong and supports the rules of the council. And I don't, if we have more than 3 or 4 or 5 people speaking, our meetings don't normally start 45 minutes after citizen comment starts. It's it's not on this, but on the regular city council agenda, it's spelled out when the council meeting has to start, and it's 45 minutes. And I think we ought to stick to that. Occasionally, for example, when the tower was being discussed, and it was an item on the agenda, we can suspend the rules and allow for extra comment. But on a normal meeting night, I think we need to stick to the 45 minutes. And I can put up with the abuse for 6 minutes.
Alderman Burris?
Actually, I want to thank the staff for bringing this recommendation forward. I am in favor of moving the citizen comment of non-agenda items to the end. And if they want to comment on agenda items that happen, votes that happen, or discussion that happened during the meeting, that people can stay and at the end say, well, I disagree with this vote, or why did you vote whatever way. So I believe that's helpful. And I agree with Alderman Rainey that we need to get to the business of the council in a timely manner. And I know that Mayor Tisdale does her darndest to get people to stay at their 3 minutes or less if we have a lot of people. But I think this is a very helpful option to move us along in a more timely way.
Alderman Rainey?
I think I'll pass.
I'm curious.
Wait, let me just say one thing. I don't know that our delays in getting to the council meeting really have to do with off-agenda items. I just don't know that many people come and talk about great ideas and get us off track and aren't addressing what's on the agenda. I think we ought to think really hard about this. I mean, I feel that I'm one of the most significant targets of some of the negativity, and I just don't support it. I mean, if people want to come up and, I mean, I just don't see that this is delaying our meetings. What's delaying our meetings is letting people go on and on and on and on, even those who are talking about agenda items.
I have a question for the city manager. Do you have any idea, Mr. City Manager, how much time we would save if we put non-agenda items at the end?
I think, echoing the comments of members of the council, it really varies on the issue and the time. There are other rules that are in place which, used, may also address these issues. But it's an interesting thought about, do we allow the public the opportunity to come and talk about issues that are, and are people discouraged potentially when they turn on the television and watch public comment and see public comment having become one sort of discourse? And would the idea of moving it to a different time, and maybe it's not the end of a meeting, maybe it's some other time, maybe it's some other period, would that have an impact on folks that would say, okay, there's now a kinder, gentler environment perhaps to come? Because I think what happens sometimes with the non-agenda items comment is becomes highly charged. And, does that discourage people from coming forward with their ideas because they see, the nature of the discourse that occurs sometimes? So I think it's very difficult to know. I think based on my almost 3 years with you, we're not talking hours of additional time. We're probably talking, 10 to 30 minutes, depending on an evening of additional time.
In my ward, we tend to talk everything to death, and I'm sure in your wards, at your ward meetings, you do too. But I think the idea that they've done in other communities with these citizen forums actually work out pretty well. because you can then bring your issue to the city council and actually have a dialogue with the council. And maybe the end of the meeting isn't the time to do that. Maybe another meeting is the time to do that. But I think having it on a regular basis is actually very, very useful. And we can hear and actually exchange ideas with the people that not only we represent in our wards, but other wards as well. Alderman Grover and then Alderman Rainey.
So put yourself in the position of an unsophisticated observer of local government, someone who doesn't know maybe that there are committees that deliberate a lot of the agenda items beforehand, but has a grievance or has an idea and is intimidated by the process, but thinks the one place I can go to put it out there is the city council. They don't think about the committee. They maybe don't even pick up the phone to call an alderman, or they don't know to email an alderman, or they don't feel as if that alderman would, forward the idea or the grievance. They would find their way to the city council. And I still think we have to keep open an opportunity for those who aren't our regulars, who want to come to the council and address the council in a general, holistic way, and have that opportunity and feel as if they have an outlet. And I don't know, Mayor Tisdall, if the best way is a citizen forum at the end, because I think that would dissuade a lot of people from hanging around to the end of the meeting for the one little thing that they wanted to address this body about. But there's got to be a way for the average, less well-informed, less plugged-in resident to come to us with their thinking on something and not have to navigate bureaucracy, government, and meeting rules to do it.
So are you suggesting, Alderman Grover, that we have citizen comment for agenda items only and then a special citizen forum for non-agenda items?
I think I'd be interested in exploring whether we can create one opportunity or two opportunities a month at the non-business meeting, our third Monday of the month, to create that opportunity for non-agenda input. I still am troubled by how this citizen forum would unfold, and whether, frankly, I wonder whether those sitting behind the dais would be able to engage in a respectful civil dialogue with citizens speaking with us. That's one of my concerns. But I'd like to explore the idea of a way to slot in a citizen forum at the third Monday meeting without violating residents' rights and their perceptions of their rights to speak.
So then the citizen comment at city council meetings would be only on agenda items and all non-agenda. I'm just trying to get it clear.
I don't know. I'm still
what
thinking
direction you're
still thinking this
heading
through.
In. Okay.
Yeah.
Alderman Rainey.
I was wondering if we're going to have a motion, or is this just for discussion?
What it says is if the committee wishes to pursue proposed changes, staff recommends that the Corporation Council be directed to draft resolution to amend the City Council rules, which is why I was trying to get.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would like to move to direct the Corporation Council to do nothing regarding this matter.
Regarding this.
Just go home and take a rest. To do nothing regarding the matter of altering the way we conduct citizen comment.
Is that your motion?
Yes, that's my
Is there a
motion.
second? I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No.
No.
Okay. All right. Alderman Burris, maybe you want to make a motion.
Actually, I want to ask a question. And I'm probably getting way too much in the weeds here. But let's say we do make the change and non-agenda items are moved to the end. What if a citizen is at the podium and decides they want to talk about a non-agenda item? What happens at that point? I'm just looking at it. Many times we do ordinances and things that it's the enforcement. It's always what's the follow-up? What's the enforcement? So.
And Alderman Burris, members of the committee, I think that then reverts back to Robert's rules that the mayor is or the chair of the body is the convener of the meeting, and it is their prerogative to rule someone out of order and ask that they sit down. We have electronic devices to help the process by shutting off the.
I was like, could you be more specific about that? Because, we got reporters up here, God only knows.
Madam Chair, could I answer that, please?
Yes, you sure can.
We have electronic devices which I refuse to use, and I think we rely upon the good faith of the community, and when I ask them to wind up their comments or to speak at another time, sometimes they do end their comments, and sometimes they don't. I think they always mean to. They just keep going and going.
Yes, Alderman Holmes.
Well, I just think that this was for discussion tonight. At least that's what it says on the agenda. I'm just not ready to make a final decision on this. I really would. I cannot visualize the Citizens Forum. I just can't. Because I think that that's sort of maybe inviting, and maybe I'm thinking about issues that have come before, that have come up at Citizens Comment. I just would not like to get into a debate, dialogue with, something that just doesn't, really make, I don't want to say it's not that it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it just doesn't make sense to get into shouting matches. And I would really be worried. I want to echo what Alderman Grover said in terms of, the people that set up here are human beings as well. And so feelings and things do get sort of emotional sometimes. And I think that we need to discuss this a little bit more before we make a decision, I think. So my motion would be that we hold it and for further discussion.
Okay, Mr. City Manager.
I don't want to interrupt the motion, but I think another thought for the group is the way the rule is crafted regarding response. Is that language too narrow, and would it be a reasonable thing to contemplate some changes to that language? My sense in sitting up here is from time to time that rule is used against the council. Right. It's that individuals make statements that perhaps are a tad more inflammatory than they might otherwise, fully knowing that the council's rules prohibit any response whatsoever. And might it be useful, if this item is going to be continued, to come back in a few months and maybe we can work, Mr. Farrar and I, on some language that would either provide the chair a little bit more latitude to respond when it's in the chair's discretion to do that, or to have a member of the council ask the mayor for there to be more response. Because I think part of the tension that I've seen in the time that I've been here when you do have someone speaking off agenda is that it's almost like a dare. It's, I'm going to say these things and you can't interrupt me and you can't question me because your very rules prohibit you from doing that. So that may be a thought if this item is going to come back for future discussion. Might there be some changes that might be appropriate there?
Alderman Burris and Rainey, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know which one of you was first.
I had the button first.
Okay.
The very thing that you just talked about, Mr. Bobkowitz, is I think I brought up several months ago. Maybe it was November, of responding, asking you to respond to citizens that made completely inaccurate comments, stated things as fact that clearly weren't, or were just extremely confused about an issue and were relaying hearsay and not having full information. So I would be very much a proponent of making that change, that there needs to be a response when something is completely not accurate, or they're asking a question. Many times people come up during citizen comment and they're asking questions. They want to know feedback, and nothing happens. Nothing is said. And I think that gives the wrong impression also to people watching, that when we don't respond to something that is wrong, we know it's wrong, it's as if we're acquiescing, saying, yes, that is true, we're not responding. So I believe there needs to be something more. I would prefer if that was a single voice. I think I said that previously, that it either be Mr. Bobkowitz or Mayor Tisdale that is responding to the question, or saying, actually, no, that's inaccurate. An alderman could flip on their switch and say, Mr. Bobkowitz, would you please respond, because I believe this is inaccurate, versus a variety of different aldermen responding. But there have been just numerous occasions where I've been so frustrated that bad information is getting out because citizens are coming up to citizen comment and saying inaccurate information. So if we can address that, I think that would be extremely helpful as well.
Okay. Well, it's been moved and seconded that we hold this in committee. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so this will be on the next Rules Committee agenda. Chairmanship changes tonight, so whoever is next. Jane. Jane gets it. Yeah.
Who would you, Chairman?
Just 1 second while I get back to my agenda here. Okay, is there any new business? Mr. City Manager, anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay, then this meeting is adjourned. Is there a motion to adjourn? Okay.
We need
and
to
a
convene
second.
the city council.
Okay, and we're going to convene into the city council.
Yes, we are. Is the city clerk here?
I haven't seen. Elaine's here.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to.
All right, city manager, would you call the roll?
Alderman Braithwaite? Here. Alderman Fisk?
Here.
Alderman Holmes?
Here.
Alderman Tendem? Here. Alderman Grover? Here. Alderman Rainey? Here. Alderman Burris? Here. Madam Mayor, there are seven aldermen present.
Thank you. Alderman Grover, would you like to make a motion to move into executive session?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes.
Turn your mic on. Mike.
I move that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding personnel, litigation, and minutes. These agenda items are permitted subjects to be considered in executive session and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act. Do I recite the exceptions?
Please.
These exceptions are 5 ILCS 120/2 and are set forth as follows. To see exceptions, a public body may hold closed meetings to consider the following. 1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. 11, C11, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. And 21, 2C21, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully disclosed under this act, whether for the purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by Section 2.06. Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.